Hello, welcome to the July 2011 video edition of the Iowa General Fund Monthly Revenue Memo. I am Jeff Robinson, Senior Fiscal Analyst for the Iowa Legislative Services Agency, the nonpartisan support agency of the Iowa Legislature. This video will cover the first month of the new fiscal year 2012, and I will also discuss U.S. and Iowa construction and housing statistics. For the month of July, Iowa net general fund revenue was $46.1 million below July 2010. Net revenue is gross revenue minus tax refunds, including school infrastructure refunds. On a percent basis, the month's decrease was 13.1%. Gross receipts for the month were down 2.6%, while regular tax refunds increased significantly and school infrastructure refunds exceeded July 2010 by $6.5 million. However, 6 significant adjustments need to be made to the July 2011 numbers to provide an accurate picture of how July 2011 compares to July 2010. This table provides an adjusted summary for July. Starting with the negative $46.1 million actual change, we need to adjust for several items that are not related to the month's actual growth. First, a recent change to the Iowa Code directs the first $106 million of cigarette tax receipts to a fund outside of the general fund. This impacted July 2011 general fund receipts by $15.2 million. Second, an annual corporate tax refund related to the refundable research activities tax credit that was issued last August was instead issued in July this year. Next, an increase in the school infrastructure refund amount decreased net revenue $6.5 million, and the increase is likely due to an adjustment to the pace of transfers in order to make up for previous under-transferred amounts. Liquor profits are moved into the state general fund on an uneven basis, and in July 2010, an unusually large amount was transferred. The July 2011 transfer was much lower and more normal. Next, a $3 million decline in miscellaneous income can be traced to the timing of periodic transfers from the unclaimed property fund. On the other side of the equation, an income tax withholding occurrence, known as the 3 Friday effect, provided a $9 million boost to July 2011, a situation that will reverse in August. The bottom line of this table reflects an adjusted July revenue growth amount that, while still negative, is substantially less so than the top line $46.1 million reported. Let's now have a look at net receipts by month over the most recent 13 months. For the following charts, the underlying numbers have not been adjusted for any calendar or processing issues. Revenue increase months are colored blue, decrease months are red. The month of July decrease now makes 3 decreases over the past 5 months, although the total revenue over the 5 months is 2.9% higher than the same 5 months last year. Personal income tax revenue is the most significant source of general fund revenue, and July returned to positive growth territory. However, much of the $13.1 million in growth for July is explained by the 3 Friday effect. Sales and use tax revenue has expanded in 11 of the past 13 months. However, the rate of growth has slowed in recent months. Corporate tax revenue is very volatile, and this graph shows that month-to-month comparisons usually yield large increases or large decreases compared to the previous year. Cigarette and tobacco taxes are part of other taxes and therefore included in this graph. The month of July marks the start of a string of months that will show significant declines in other taxes as the first $106 million of cigarette tax revenue gets deposited to a fund outside of the general fund. In summary, the month of July 2011 was a significantly negative month, although not near as negative as the headline negative 13.1% rate of growth would indicate. While general fund revenue growth over recent months remains positive, the pace of growth appears to be slowing. To end this month's video memo, let's take a look at important construction economic indicators. Construction plays a very large role in any developed economy, and it played a significant role in the economic peak and subsequent fall-off experienced prior to the start of the national recession that began December 2007. This chart provides a depiction of the amount of expenditures in the U.S. economy for residential, private, and public construction since 1993. The graph shows the significant run-up starting in 2003 with a peak in March 2006 that was then followed by a steep decline through January 2010. Since that time, construction expenditures have been flat to slightly negative on a nominal basis. The recent trend is well below the trend line established prior to 2003. New home sales in the U.S. show a similar bubble, starting in the late 1990s and accelerating in 2003 with a peak in November of 2005 of almost 1.3 million housing units for the year. The drop from that point was stunning, and the nation is now building almost 1 million fewer homes a year than at the peak of the housing bubble. The recent trend is somewhat encouraging as the free fall appears to have stopped, at least for the moment. For this chart, the red line values appear on the red axis on the left, and the blue line, which represents the percentage decline since the peak, is shown on the axis on your right. This graph shows U.S. and Iowa existing home sales on a quarterly basis as provided by the National Association of Realtors. U.S. existing home sales, shown in red, peaked in the second quarter of 2004 at almost 8 million units on an annual basis, and they declined to a low point of 4.6 million units in the first quarter of 2009. Since that quarter, existing home sales have shown little improvement. Iowa sales, shown in blue, peaked much later than U.S. sales at around 80,000 units per year, and then fell to a pace of about 52,000. Quarterly numbers for the state have been somewhat volatile, and the annual unit sales in Iowa now register at about 57,000 and are at about the same level experienced from 1998 through 2003. U.S. sales are currently about 34% below their peak, and Iowa sales are 28% below the Iowa sales peak. The Iowa experience has not been as long or as deep as the U.S. experience, but it has been significant nonetheless. The U.S. Housing Price Index provided by the Federal Housing Finance Agency shows U.S. housing prices peaked in April of 2007 and fell noticeably through December of 2008. The decline has slowed since that time, but still continues. The agency produces a quarterly index of Iowa values for each state, and the Iowa index indicates that home prices have flattened here, but have not significantly declined. Construction, new and existing home sales, and housing prices have all experienced significant declines over the last 5 to 7 years. While recent months show signs that the declines are ending, it will be quite a while before activity reaches its former peak. Iowa's experience over the time frame has been better than the U.S., with Iowa home prices holding up much better during the crisis. I appreciate your interest in Iowa General Fund revenue. Goodbye, and please check out the next monthly memo in early September.